Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, and our show today is Your Story, Your Grief, Your Journey. And our topic, it's such an important one. It really resonates with me, and maybe it has with you or will. It's dealing with being lonely and alone, starring the international mentor and international best-selling author, Mr. Doug Lawrence, joining us from Canada. Come on out, Doug. Nice to see you.
It's great to see you as well. And hello to our listeners and viewers all over the world. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today for a very interesting and thought-provoking conversation that we're about to have. And I hope that you all take something away from it today that is going to help you as much as it getting prepared for the show as much as it did helped me for sure.
Doug, we were talking backstage before we came out, and this is a topic we can both relate to, even though we're coming from different experiences. And so I imagine for some percentage of people, they have felt like this, where you're in a crowd, but you still feel alone. I'd love for us to each share a little bit of our experiences with the feeling of being lonely and being alone. First of all, what's the difference between being lonely and being alone, if there is?
Well, there definitely is a difference, as I found out when I was working with one of the people that I spent some time with mentoring, and that being lonely is an emotional state and being alone is a physical state. And it sort of came to me as we were talking and going through, how I felt and how this individual felt. And what we ended up coming to was that, yes, there is a difference, and it's a significant one. And one is an emotional state, and the other is a physical state. And I know in my particular case, it can be a blend of the two.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Doug. And I can relate to what you're saying. And also, I mentioned this to you backstage, that you were married, you're with Deborah for a long time. You did a lot of things together and things that you now have to do by yourself. I've been alone for a long time, and it doesn't feel any nicer. It doesn't feel any easier when you're still doing things alone, but you figure out how to do it and you get it done. I also think we should look at when you are not alone, but you're with someone you don't want to be with, then you truly feel not only alone, but trapped sometimes. That's a whole other show for a different topic.
But you've actually touched on a very interesting point, is that, the feeling, the physical state of being alone is one that can happen to you or with you, no matter the situation. And that's, the aspect of being with somebody that you don't really want to be with can in fact, and does create a huge void in your life. And at times it leaves us wondering and questioning, what am I doing wrong? Why am I connected with this individual, because look at how it's making me feel. It's making me feel very alone, and I shouldn't feel that way, when in fact, there's a physical presence of an individual that's, standing right beside me, and I need to be able to figure out, okay, now what am I going to do? And that's the other part, is that, when we go through and we're feeling alone or feeling lonely, a large part of that in a lot of cases comes from us being alone because of the people that we're connected to, who do not know how to connect with somebody who may be, like in my case, dealing with grief, or in your case, you've been, without someone, standing by your side for a period of time. And, people, in some cases, people don't know how to connect or communicate with either one of us because of that particular physical state that we're in.
Definitely. I definitely am in alignment with what you're saying. Now, just to make it even more spicy, what about people who can't be alone? That's on another show as well. And I've heard people say this: you should spend more time alone getting to know yourself. So we've got extremes here.
Getting to know yourself is actually a very important step to have to go through. I think we need to be able to be comfortable with who we are as a person, and because part of being able to communicate and being able to connect with others comes from, sort of that self-caring, self-worth. And I'm okay with who I am as a person. So from a self-worth perspective, I can kind of check that one off in the box and say, okay, that's great. I'm in a happy place, if there is such a thing. That's another show as well. But anyhow, we want to be able to be comfortable with ourselves. We want to believe that we are in a good place, and that we're going to be able to move forward. And I know, for myself, I know that I are just around the corner. Maybe that's the best way to put it. I know that just around the corner that I will find that certain person that, is going to fill a void for me, and be able to help me deal with the state of being alone, or feeling the loneliness that I'm experiencing today.
And Doug, of course, as always, thank you for being so transparent and so courageous to share your feelings, because I know that there are people out there who are feeling the same way. Now, when we think about the loneliness, is loneliness something that's temporary? Or is it something that we carry with us deep in our soul?
I think it depends on whereabouts you are. Like the sense of the feeling of loneliness, I think, depends about where you are in the journey of grief, using grief as the example. So you've lost your loved one, you're grieving, you're going through, a process. I think the loneliness, now that as we're talking, all these things are going through my mind, and the one thing that I keep cycling back to is that that state of loneliness, that's not going to go away, because what's sparking that is Deborah, and the fact that she's not here creates that void, that loneliness that I don't think will, at least I'm not getting any signs that it's going to go away. In fact, it's going to stay with me for a long, long period of time. The question that I then have to ask myself is, how does that play into me wanting to be able to say, using this as an example, me wanting to be able to find someone that is going to be able to help me deal with the loneliness and being alone.
Okay. So something I want you to ponder is that even though you are alone at this moment, I'm alone at this moment, that doesn't mean that we're lonely, right? They're two separate things. So I have been alone for a long time, but I don't feel lonely. I'm just highly aware of the fact that I am alone and there's no one there to console, to celebrate with, to do any of those things. But I don't feel lonely. What are your thoughts about what I just shared? You think I'm crazy?
I think you're lucky.
Oh, okay, good. Can you elaborate?
Just because, it's you've apparently figured out, or you have the coping skills in place to be able to deal with the sense or the feeling of loneliness.
Yes. Yes, I would say I have resolved myself to 10 minutes of upsetment about it when something happens, and then I have to let it go. And I don't have a pity party like, woe is me. Why do I have to deal with this by myself? I just say, how will you deal with this? But at the same time, I almost feel like when you and I've discussed this, you go out to a restaurant and you're there by yourself and you look around. How many times have you seen this? People at the table, not even talking to each other. They're using their phones. They're not looking at one another. And I think I'd rather be sitting here by myself alone than be sitting at one of those other tables, feeling that emptiness, that loneliness. Like, why am I here with this person? So I'm not sure what the answer is, Doug.
So I've seen that too. We've when Deborah was still with us, I remember going with another couple to a fairly good restaurant. And what was interesting is we put all our phones away. And as I kind of panned the room and took a look, I saw this young couple sitting not too far from us. He was on his phone, she was on hers. And I thought, gosh, golden opportunity missed, blown. You won't get it back. And I made a point of sort of saying to Deborah and the couple that we were with is that they don't realize the opportunity that they've been presented, and they don't realize that by doing what they're doing, it's a missed opportunity in that they have time where they could, have a very intimate conversation, and I sort of saw it as there's an opportunity that you can kind of flirt and tease with each other, and who knows where that could very well end up going by the time you get home. So it's a missed opportunity that, that people just let it go. And that part is, that's sad, because then the question I then ask myself, is the idea or concept of a relationship, is that something that isn't part of their story? And do they get a sense or a feeling of being alone or loneliness when they're out for supper and they have to resort to being on their cell phones in order to fill that gap or close that gap? And I tend to think that, we've haven't done ourselves any favors by becoming so dependent on cell phones, and we lose sight of the ability to be able to actually have a meaningful relationship with somebody where we can deal with whether or not we are alone, or loneliness, and all of the things we're talking about. Is that, are we going to, I saw an advertisement the other day where there was 3 people, 2 of them put their phones face down underneath something, and the third one was trying to just keep on texting when the other two sort of ganged up and said, okay, time up, put the phone away. And then the three of them had a meaningful conversation that they probably wouldn't have had if they would have kept going with the whole cell phone thing.
Yes, and it brings to light something that happened many, many, many years ago. I was out in LA. I think I was in Beverly Hills even. I was at this very nice restaurant, and this very handsome, distinguished, well-known actor came in, and it was obvious to me that he was on a date with a much younger woman. And as soon as he walked in, of course, there was a lot of movie stars in that area, but he was the only one I saw in the restaurant. But of course, everyone stopped and was staring at him. And she was striking, and they were sitting across the table from each other, and they hardly spoke. They both had their phones out. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is like a legend here. And he's with this beautiful woman, and they had nothing to say to each other. And I thought, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, how much money you have, what you look like. We all go through this at some point or another. I think what we're talking about today is not something that's so tertiary or transient. It's something that is more lasting, and it's the result of a loss. And how do we accept it? How do we even identify that that's what we're going through? So here's a question I have for you, Doug. If someone's feeling lonely or they feel alone, are they then depressed? Are they depressed and then they're lonely, or do they have nothing to do with each other?
No, they are definitely connected. I would say, based on my own personal experience, that whether it's feeling, whether you feel that you are alone, or you're the being alone or being lonely, that can definitely lead towards a heightened anxiety, heightened stress. All of those things can be fueled by the fact that you're going through that. And I, when I think back to myself, I think one of the things that pops into my mind was when we were in the early stages of our relationship, our courting stage, and Deborah was back at home starting to get ready to for the wedding that she was planning for the both of us. And I was still engaged in working as a police officer in the northern part of the country. And that's where I made the comment earlier about, one of the things that ends up happening when, you feel that you're alone or you're lonely, all of those things, is that you sometimes turn to alcohol. And I know in the case of our relationship, the fact that she was, 1,000+ miles away, and our only method of communicating was by letter, that I had times where I had moments where I became very depressed, and and I think I've mentioned previously in some other shows where I had suicidal thoughts at one time point, just because here we were. I didn't have the coping skills that I needed in order to be able to deal with the loneliness and feeling alone and all of that. I turned to, like I've said a couple times, I turned to alcohol as that was supposed to be my coping skills, when in fact it works to the contrary. So I think when I reflect back on that there is definitely a connection between, depression and anxiety and all of those things, and with feeling alone or being lonely. There's definitely a connection.
Okay, so now I want to go from the opposite perspective. So I shared that I not only feel alone, I am alone, and I've been alone for a long time. I'm very happy though. I'm a very positive person, very optimistic. So how do you account for that?
It comes from my perspective. Number one, congratulations that you're able to, to do that. And actually, I think that there are some people that couldn't do what you do. They just, there's some people that, would be more inclined to sort of, try and figure out, okay, now I've been alone by myself for, let's just pick a number, 20 years, and I'm still here, so things must be working out all right, when in fact there may very well be something that's missing from you as a person. So when we come, when we do that cycle back to sort of look at it from, the self-care and sort of me as a person, am I satisfied? Am I happy with who I am and where I am in my life? And if I'm not, is it something I have control over? And if it is, what am I going to do in order to change that landscape so that it may be something that is different?
Yes, and I think different is the pivotal word, because I think I am different. And what I mean by that is, as you know, I just turned 60, and I started doing an assessment of my life and what I'm doing. I love what I'm doing. I love doing this. I love doing the coaching and the writing and all of it. And of course, as I've mentioned before, there's no one to celebrate with. And I just am used to it. When I think to myself, what it would take to be emotionally available for someone else, I don't have the time. And I don't mean that to be flippant, but I'd have to give something up. And I'm not willing to give anything up at this point in time. We do have a question.
So I would have to say that obviously we're sort of different, but that there are some things that you're able to do differently than what, say, maybe I'm doing differently. And I think we need to have that level of strength or fortitude to be able to sort of say, okay, I need to do this, and here are the reasons why, and move forward to do so.
Makes sense. Yes. And sorry, StreamYard kicked me out for a second. I went to put up the question and I was gone. So here's the question from Gaffa Brumley Precy. Nice to have you with us. Can loneliness make one act weird? Now, of course, we'd have to define weird, what weird means to Gaffa.
Yeah, and that was my first thought was, okay, what's your definition of weird? And it goes both ways. So, it's the person who is feeling lonely, going through a period of loneliness, and the people who are on the receiving end of the weird behavior. And I think that it's not so much that it's weird, but it's the aspect of, number one, that people feel comfortable enough to be able to sort of reach out, for lack of a better choice of words. So people feel comfortable to be able to do that. And for me, like if somebody's acting weird and I'm going to, it's a behavioral issue that, we need to be able to have that conversation. This is, something that I would probably dive into with that individual, and I would be asking, questions, just like you would do this much the same thing, Dr. JACALYN, with your coaching businesses. We would ask questions to get to sort of the root of what the issue is, and then together we would formulate a strategy on how we're going to deal with that and be able to move forward. So, if I would say that people will have a reaction if they're going through and feeling lonely. And part of the reaction they're going to have is the uncertainty or the lack of opportunity to sort of map out what this does in fact look like, and be able to deal with that. And like I said, coaching and mentoring would definitely be a path that I would explore in order to get to the root cause of So, you're going through a lot of different things today, and it's, I hear what you're saying. What are some of the things, some of the things that you've sort of hinted towards from a loneliness perspective? What are some of the things that you've already done to deal with that, and what could be some things that you could deal with going forward? Food for thought.
Yeah, great points. Thank you. We have a follow-up from Gaffa. Please, by acting in a strange way. So let's just address strange again. Also, hard to describe what strange means, but we had talked about this backstage, Doug, where when a person feels lonely or they don't belong or they feel isolated, you talked about drinking. I talked about shopping backstage. I was obsessed with shoes and bags, and I would just buy shoes and bags to fill this void in my life. And of course, it never worked. And then as soon as you get them, like, what did I spend that money for? So that was a long time ago. I've done a lot of work since then. But people can react or act in ways that are not healthy because they're not addressing what is the root cause of the problem.
That's correct. Yeah. And to be able to do that, you have to be comfortable with who you are as a person, because it's very easy to dispel any forward momentum if you're not happy with who you are as a person. And a couple things that kind of jumped out was, for me, was the idea of the weird and strange. And I would be more inclined to want to look at things from a more positive aspect, of to be able to say, okay, so there's obviously some things that are not maybe right for this individual because their behavior would signify otherwise. And so being able to come at it from that perspective, rather than sort of labeling them from a weird and strange aspect, to be able to say, how I always approach those things is I want to get to the root cause, but why is this individual behaving in the manner that they are, and what do we need to do together to be able to change that?
And Doug, I think you brought up something else that just I'm reflecting on. When we ourselves realize that we have this hole or this emptiness or whatever it is that people are feeling, that sometimes can be very difficult to explain to people whom we love when they don't feel the same way. Therefore, a coach, a mentor, someone you can speak to who's not going to judge or say, just get over it. Why haven't you moved on yet? Those kinds of things that, of course, end up setting us back. So, what advice do you have for anyone who's out there right now and they're thinking, I'm really identifying with what these two are talking about today, and I have no one to talk to about it?
That has, okay, so having no one to talk to, I think is in some essence an easy way to get out of this situation. It's kind of like mental health, and I always talk about, for a number of people are still in the closet and are afraid to come out of the closet, and all they need to do is reach out and someone will be there to take their hand. It's the same sort of thing with what we've been talking about, throughout this whole show, is that you're going to be dealing with loneliness, and you're going to have a feeling, you're going to feel that you're alone. And all of those are things that we can address, that you can address. And it's a matter of being able to sort of, the best way, I guess, for me to describe that is, what we need to be able to do is together is to sort of open that door and have that conversation that's going to help us work our way through the feeling of being alone and the feeling of loneliness, and being able to do that. And if we can do that together, coach and mentor with an individual, or either one or the other or both, I think what you're going to see is it helps make that transition in being able to deal with that to make it a more positive approach. It's not going to necessarily, at the end of the day, we may not feel that we've accomplished what we would like to have accomplished. But I think that what I've seen anyhow is that I would be a lot further along if I had that approach to sort of take.
What about taking those feelings and putting them into your work? How does that work? Double work in that sentence.
It does help to some extent. That's what I do. I try to bury myself in work as much as I possibly can, but I'm also at the same time mindful that I need that work-life balance, because it's very easy to fall into sort of the trap of working all the time. And I've found that when I do that, that's when I start to experience health issues, and then I have people that are trying to connect with me who say, you're always working. We can never seem to find a time that works for you to join us and over a cup of coffee or a lunch or things like that. So I'm always cautious and always mindful of my work-life balance to make sure that that still exists. And I know that sort of is counterproductive to dealing with the loneliness, but is it? I'm going to suggest to you that by doing what I do, the whole work-life balance, I'm creating the opportunities for people to connect, which is going to help me deal with that sense or that feeling of being alone, or the aspect of the loneliness. And if I can get to a state where I get that balance, then that's going to obviously help a lot more than what it is today.
Okay, so let's just do a little role play here, all right? So I am struggling. This is hypothetical. I'm struggling, and now I'm meeting you somewhere for a cup of coffee, and I show up and I say, oh, Doug, I can't take it anymore. I feel so alone. I have this going on, that going on. There's no one to talk to, blah, 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 blah. Are you going to get your coffee and run out the door? Not you as the international mentor, but you as just my friend that, we're getting together, and you're thinking it's going to be a happy conversation. And now I pull us down into the weeds.
What I would probably do, and it's difficult to kind of stay away from the international mentoring thing, but what I would typically be able to, what I would do, even as a friend, and I should be honest, I guess I have conversations with friends who are going through different things, and we have a conversation based on the fact that we're friends with each other. And I would be inclined to sort of say, I hear what you're saying. Is there something that we can do together that's going to maybe change how you feel? And approach it from that particular angle, to let them know, number one, that you've identified that yes, there is an issue, but more importantly, number two, is that together we can maybe work our way through that and see where we end up going with that.
I like that approach. That's a good one. I think something also that we have to really be aware of is, and this happens in therapy also, is that people get so accustomed to that person being there that it's like they're a crutch. And when the session's over, the coaching session, the mentoring session, it's kind of like, okay, during the session, you feel like you have it together. And then afterwards, no, please don't end it. Please don't leave me. Can I call you at home? Can I call you in the middle of the night? So that can also happen with friendships or relationships where we cross the line. And I feel like this also comes back to being out of control. So I'd love to have your professional perspective on this. I feel like once we are out of denial and we are aware of what it is that is off, maybe we can't put a name to it or a label to it, but we start reading and we realize, okay, I feel lonely. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person. I'm not going to judge myself. Everything in life except for death and taxes is temporary. So this loneliness feeling is temporary. What can I do at the moment to make myself feel some kind of joy, to make myself feel that I have value and I have worth, and that's not dependent upon someone else?
Well, there's a number of different approaches that you can take, and I'm a I'm a post-it note on the bathroom mirror sort of person that, you know, obviously, we're struggling here with the idea of, you know, my self-worth and self-esteem and all of that. And as in the example you've sketched out, we become reliant on the support that we just finished getting from this friend, and we're wondering what life's going to be if that friend disappears. And I think that part of that is we need to, and this kicks us back into the whole mentoring thing, but we need to explore, what does our relationship as friends, what does that look like? Because the last thing I think you want to have happen is you definitely don't want it to be where you become the crutch, the person that they rely on, quite heavily. In my mentoring practice, one of the things that I make sure people understand is, I'm here to guide. I'm not here to tell you or what to do. I'm not here to do it for you. I'm here as your guide. And it was interesting. I thought, well, it's finally working. This is good. So I actually had one of my entrepreneurs that I'm mentoring that we were having a bit of a crisis conversation. And at the end of the conversation, the individual said, well, I know that you're not going to tell me what to do. I know that, I have to figure this out. You're going to be here to support me. But I know that I cannot expect that you're going to give me the answer on a silver platter. And I went, you're absolutely right. I'm not going to do that. And so I think, to come back to your question, I think that we need to, at the very early stages of that friendship, and that we need to have that conversation to be able to say, okay, where is that line, and where are we both comfortable in having those conversations? Because if you don't have that, it's going to go south on you fairly quickly.
This has been a really powerful and insightful conversation. And of course, I'm looking at the clock. I can't believe how fast time has gone by. GAFA writes, very true, doctor. I have experienced that before. Thank you so much for engaging with us today, GAFA. GAFA is in Ghana. And we appreciate all of your follows and your likes. So, Doug, it's time to close out because our next show is coming up, Stories of Hope, Inspiration, Overcoming Adversity. Do you have your book there that you can read something for us? Tell us what you're going to be sharing.
It's part of chapter 6. So it's in the book itself. It's
Can you hold up the book so
I'm sorry.
You are not alone. And you can find it on Amazon.
It's available on Amazon. So I'm going to just do a short excerpt from chapter 6, which is mentoring in the workplace. So organizations today have neglected employees that are struggling with mental health, mental well-being, post-traumatic stress, and operational stress injury. Some of the employees are impacted by the environment that they work in, while others have been impacted by an environment external to the workplace. This book would serve as a reference to those organizations. I hope that the stories and experiences I've shared will spur the desire for companies to set up this kind of support program for their employees. To managers and HR practitioners, I would say that employees are your most valuable partner on your road to being successful. If we do not provide them with the opportunity to heal when they are struggling, then we are letting them down and subjecting them to a life of pain and suffering, physically and mentally.
Wow, very powerful. Thank you, Doug.
Thank
We
you.
also have a comment from our friends in Uganda, Push Child Foundation, Uganda. Thanks for the show. Thanks for watching. All right, Doug, how can people reach out to you and who do you want to contact you?
Well, I'm open to anyone who is on a healing journey or anyone just wants to reach out and have a conversation. They can do so. You can reach me through LinkedIn and all the other social media platforms, but I always encourage people to just send me an email message. So doug.lawrence@TalentC, so the word talent, letter C on the end.ca, and you can see it on the banner there. You can also go through the website at www.talentc.ca and go to the contact page and reach me that way. And, the other part is my book, You Are Not Alone, is available on Amazon, as you've already mentioned. And it's a good read. Not that I'm biased or anything, but it is definitely a good read. So please feel free to do so. And if you get a copy of the book and you want to discuss some various pieces or parts of the book after you've read it, I'm open to that idea as well.
Thank you so much, Doug. We will be right back with our next show. Before we go, I just want to walk people through how to register, because in the last couple of days, I've had a number of people who want to be on the show, but they don't know how to do it. So, Doug, if you have to go get ready for the next show, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm just going to walk us through this. Okay, so what you will do is you will go to usaglobaltv.com. As you can see here, you can also reach this through USA Global TV and radio.com, all spelled out. You're going to go over to book your session. Now, I just want to share with you, if you want to be a guest, you do not have to write to me or anyone else to ask for permission to be a guest. You just follow the process that I'm showing you right now. This saves a lot of time instead of you having to go through and be filtered out. We want to support as many people as possible. You're just going to scroll down and you're going to find the show that you want to be on. So there are 2 pages of shows. So that means when you get to the bottom, you're going to click see all, and you're going to keep scrolling down. So for example, if you wanted to be on this show, you go right here, your story, your grief, your journey. You're going to click book, and then you're going to look for, there's an opening on Tuesday, the 2nd and the 30th of May. You'll click on this. And for some reason it's, oh, there we go. Okay. And here you see 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you click book. On the side, you're going to see this is the show that you want to be on, and you're going to fill out your information. Now, when you're filling out your information, this section is vitally important. What are 3 to 5 topics you want to discuss during the interview? How did you find us? Did you have a publisher? We were referred. And then please email your bio, your social media links to info@usaglobaltv.com. And you will get an email that you've been confirmed to book. And then one day before the actual show, you'll get a reminder email. So I hope that that helps and that people will start booking in, because people are writing to me, how do I book in? And then I write them back and they still are not understanding the process. So there it is, simple and easy, hopefully. So Doug, we're going to take a short break, a little wardrobe change, and then we will be back with our next show. So please do stay with us. We look forward to seeing you next week, same day, same time, same channel. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.